there you go. All right, so welcome everyone back to our Cultivator event. We're very excited because we have the amazing Spencer McCullough with us. He's going to talk about the 4-day work week. He is the amazing senior customer champion at Zapier, or Zapper, Zappler. I completely
Happier.
see.
Rhymes with happier.
I in here. There we go. So he's the amazing senior customer service at Zapper, and he's going to talk about how he is working to launch a 4-day work week and share all the lessons that he's learned, his experiences for. And we're going to also host a wonderful little discussion about our experience with change making. So Spencer, I'm going to send it off to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer, as you know. Also, apologies in case anyone walks through here. We moved into a new place. There's a lot of stuff happening upstairs above me, and this was the only place I could carve out for a presentation. So today I want to talk about 4-day work weeks. This is a slightly modified version of a presentation I gave back in January at our retreat for Zapier. We have like a time where people can present about anything they want. Someone gave a presentation about Enneagrams. I presented about 4-day work weeks. And yeah, I've changed it a little bit since coronavirus happened. Some of the things I would have, at the end, I mentioned some of the things I would have focused on more and talked about some of the things I've now left out because they're not as relevant. And just to be clear, this is 32-hour weeks, not 4-10s. Sometimes people like to keep the 40 hours and just crunch them together. I'm just saying we dropped the last 8. So the reason I thought this would be a good idea for Zapier is one of our core mottos is build the robot, don't be the robot. And we build automation software if you're not familiar with us. And we're also a totally remote company. We have always been a remote company, so we have a lot of really robust processes for working asynchronously. And when Zapier was founded, working remotely at the time was kind of a big gamble. It was a new, novel idea. A lot of people weren't doing it. As we're seeing now, just about everybody that can is doing it. It's becoming more commonplace. And so the argument I made to our team was, if our software is as good as we say it is, as we know it is, then this will just be a testament to that. Working 4 days a week, still hitting all of our milestones. There isn't a lot of rejiggering we need to do behind the scenes to get this to work. We already have a lot of really great processes in place. And we got a lot of notoriety in the beginning for being a remote company. And so let's not rest on that. Let's move on and like push for the next big thing in organization, which I was saying is the 4-day work week. Just a little history on the 5-day work week that we currently have, where that came from, how that happened. At the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, work week was 7 days a week. Some places it was 6 for religious observations, either on Saturday or Sunday. But leisure was a class privilege. There was a big social movement in the late 19th century to kind of push for this 40-hour week. And that didn't really solidly take hold in American culture until the Great Depression, when the government embraced it as a way to kind of employ more people. If we cut everybody's hours a little bit, it could try to get as many people working as possible. So many of us might have grandparents that are older than the current 5-day work week that we know today. We've ditched a lot of things from that generation, like the telegram, horse-drawn carriages, but we still have their 5-day work week, which was pretty arbitrary and just something that a bunch of advocates pushed for. So it's something that a bunch of advocates could change. So I argue that the 4-day work week has several potential benefits. One, improved work-life balance. You get that extra day off, either to go on longer vacations or take care of all those little tasks, at home that just keep piling up. It helps with recruiting. It makes you a much more attractive place to work. Happier, more engaged employees, reduce stress, and increases productivity and improves focus. We'll see in a couple examples how that kind of played out. Now, there are some risks. You could miss all your OKRs at work. If your company provides support, the coverage could get spotty. You might not be able to hit those turnaround times that you want. If you work with a lot of partners to launch projects, that could slow down, or you could hit snags. If there are outages, maybe they last longer because there are less people online at certain times. Lots of time zone headaches. And then something that I hadn't thought about at first, or someone pointed out to me, self-esteem issues. This whole idea of like hustle culture in America, and like working as hard as you can, as long as you can, putting in all of these hours, and always being at work and in your chair and online. You know, if you're trying to tell people to take a break and to relax and to work a little bit less, there could be issues with that. So this has been tried in a couple different places on experimental bases. So we saw in Japan, Microsoft, they went with a 4-day work week for several months. And they saw this paper had a lot of really interesting stats on it. One was that 59% less paper was used and printed by employees. So I don't know, all these people just needed, like in 8 hours, they were printing 60% less. I don't know what causes something like that to happen. But they also saw productivity, as they outline in the paper, go up 40%. They saw a lot of emails get canceled. People were making the calls they needed to make. They weren't dragging out their workday as much. They were knocking things out so they could go home and have that extra day. And then there's a smaller company, Perpetual Garden. They're an asset management firm in New Zealand. The CEO has really gotten hot on 4-day work weeks and has given a TED Talk and written a book about it since they ran this experiment. They ended up going with it full time. They saw that their employees were 20% more effective. They were more engaged. They were less stressed out, and they stopped wasting time at work as much. They saw a drop in like social media site usage by 35%. And his TED Talk is really cool. He talks about how people kind of saw this as like they didn't want to mess it up for other people as much as they wanted to have this extra day off. And so they came to work a lot more focused, turned a lot more of those meetings into emails, tried to unblock other people and not just make themselves look busy, which was really cool. And then there are companies like Basecamp, which do a thing called summer hours, where they don't do 4-day work weeks for the whole year, but they do them for, you know, part of like a seasonal thing. So they really love that because they talk about how it gives people something to look forward to. It kind of brings a new fresh energy into the workplace, reinvigorates people a little bit. And so that's something they've been doing for years now. So before, when I originally gave this presentation, there were a couple slides on the unemployment rate, because at the time there were more people looking, or there were more jobs available than people looking for them. And so I really laid into that in making us a competitive place to hire. And then I had focused less on reducing stress and work-life balance. And I would even go deeper on that now, talking about parents who have children at home. You and your spouse might both be at home working remotely, have 1, 2, 3 kids at home all day who are trying to do school. This extra day to kind of take care of that, I think, is even more important now than it was before. And depending on your industry, this might not be a great time to push for this if you're all hands on deck trying to save your company. But at the same time, maybe it's a last ditch Hail Mary play. I don't know what issues you might be facing, but maybe this will kind of shake things up enough for you that you can sort things out. And I have since January talked a lot more about this at work, and just kind of pick people's brains on what their hesitations are. So Zapier, we're 350 people all around the globe. So time zones are a pretty big problem for us. So like I'm on the support team. We have people who live in Australia who are on the support team. They only get 3 days of overlap right now with support leadership, because support leadership is based in North America. And if we dropped another day from the work week, they'd only get 2. So they had some kind of questions and concerns about that. Just, you know, it can kind of feel lonely if you're in some of these other time zones that don't have as many Zapier folks. And if you don't get the face time that you need with management to do your job efficiently, that could not engage you to do a better job, but actually make you feel quite isolated. So that was something we've talked a lot about. And then, you know, summer hours, who's summer? Right now, it's the winter there for them. So if we were to do an experiment, do we do a seasonal transition time? You know, how do we pick that so it's equitable, so everyone here in North America is not going to the beach while they're all kind of snowed in at home? And then support coverage. Since January, we have kind of changed the way we do support a little bit. So instead of just everyone in a massive queue, we've started specializing and focusing that. And those different queues have different responsibilities, different response time requirements. and trying to manage all of those different goals with the people that are in them, because they weren't necessarily selected for that queue based on where they live. So some folks might be like, some of those queues might be highly heavy with people who, if they were all out on a Friday or a Monday, could really mess up those metrics. So that's been this project so far. Presented in January. It's not something we're currently planning to do as a company, not something we're currently planning to implement. But I advocate for it frequently when there are Business Insider articles and stuff. I drop them in our random channel at work to talk more about that, just to let people know that we haven't forgotten. And we're coming up on our 2021 planning part of the year, so I'm kind of trying to float that in as much as possible. I never really paid attention to the planning process before as an independent contributor, and my manager kind of pushed me to, just keep an eye on that and know how it works, because maybe there will be a place where I could slide this in and it will get kind of a critical response from the people who make these kinds of decisions. So if you're not normally involved in the planning process, it might be something to look more into if you're going to advocate for something. But yeah, so that's what it's been like. And yeah.
All right, so I can jump in here. Thank you so much, Spencer, for that. We are going to jump into our discussion very shortly and kind of follow up like any questions you have for Spencer and things like that. Before we jump into that, we're just going to quickly remind you that there's two call to actions here. One is we challenge you to take what you've learned, whether it's the ideas that you came up with, what Spencer did to inspire you, continue in the conversation once we jump back into Slack afterwards, and also join our conversation. We host events like this all the time. We also co-create a lot of our, like all of our events really, with great members like Spencer. So if you have an idea that you would like to see, or you would like to share something you're working on, please feel free to reach out to me, because we're here to support you, and we want you to be the forefront of that, because we're all working on incredible things, such as Spencer, we've had Freddie, and other great members. So now we're gonna jump into the discussion, and I'll let Spencer lead, and Steve and I will be there to support.
Yeah, awesome. Let me stop sharing my screen. Cool. Yeah, so it's been this was my first time kind of advocating for a big change at a workplace like this. And the coronavirus has really changed everyone's priorities. It's been really hard to stay on the radar, like in the beginning, there was, or last year's planning process, I kind of pushed this in, and once all of this started happening, this was one of the first things to easily get axed. And so it was tough to like not kind of take that personally, but at the same time, I know the people at the top are trying to make sure no one gets fired, and like we are still profitable and exist at the end of the day. So I understand why that happened. And it's been interesting to see other groups of people at work starting to realize that this is actually more important to them than they might have thought before. It's not some just like hippy dippy little like trying to work less, get paid more, like little pipe dream, but actually having all of their kids at home and all this stuff is incredibly stressful, and this extra day makes a lot of sense. And a lot of folks are working flexible schedules that they've negotiated on a one-on-one basis with their managers, just based on whatever the needs are in their, their immediate life right now. And nothing bad has happened at work, and people are starting to realize that like, hey, we've hired great people, we can trust them to do great things. And so the advocacy that I've been doing is less big presentations and trying to get everyone on board, and more just like floating it out when tangentially related conversations come up, to help people connect the dots and see the value. But I don't know if any of you work at places where you have unique challenges that implement, or like that you would want to work in a 4-day work week, have worked in a 4-day work week, or have unique challenges that you can think of at your workplace. I don't know if you have any input on anything that I shared. I would love to kind of hear more.
I have a couple questions, Spencer, if that's good. I don't want to monopolize too much, but
no,
I thought
please.
This was great, so thank you. And it's interesting because as you were talking, I kept thinking of like, especially now that everyone's working from home, like it's really that it's a 40-hour minimum work week. And what you're trying to advocate for is a 32-hour minimum work week, because everyone's kind of working all the time and working more than that anyway. So I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting take on it. Actually, do you know if any companies have gone to 4-day work weeks since COVID?
I know a lot of people are trying new summer hours, and I'll be very curious to see how the transitioning out of summer hours happens for them, if that is something they're even able to do, and maybe that's their new normal.
Yeah. I was curious if in the Microsoft example or the other examples, how, and I know this is maybe almost impossible, but like how people are measuring amount of work. Like, I guess in some cases, progress towards OKRs, you could say like, yeah, at the end of the day, I got the same deliverables done. It's for some people's work, that might be the same. For some people's work, particularly if you're a software developer or your customer support person, like probably the amount would be measurably less, just because you're working, or is that not the case? Is my assumption incorrect? Like, how do you think about that?
Certainly. So from a support perspective, that's something that comes up a lot, right? If we all just work one day less, then that's, if I'm doing 50 tickets a day, that's 50 tickets less a week that I'd be doing. So that would increase response times. So then it kind of gets into like, if we want to keep those numbers the same, maybe we have to take a step back and like, what are things we're willing to automate or remove from the queue that we've really been putting off? So, refunds, like maybe you just make those automatic, like Scott's Cheap Flights does, if anyone's ever seen that. Within like 30 days, you can just request your own refund and it processes it automatically. That's a couple tickets out of my queue every day that I would have. And kind of other things like that. Are there things you can, like, you just have never thought about removing? And so that was in the Microsoft example, they talk about that more in the long paper that they published, how they asked them to just think about their job and things that they had never questioned before as like needing to be done. And maybe there's a lot of stuff you can trim. If you work a very efficient, effective work day already, that might be hard.
Yeah, but that's interesting. I was trying to remember the name of it. It's some German name law, like Borg or Baumel's cost disease or something. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like, essentially, if you look at, historically, right, all of the gains that we've made in productivity, you say, the 40-hour work week is still this legacy that's 90 years old, but the productivity gains have never been returned to the employee. They're only returned to the company. So the way we do customer service now, yes, is X, but the way we did customer service 30 years ago took way more time. None of those gains have ever been given to an employee. The way we do software development now is different. None of those gains have ever been returned. So maybe I like the reframe, which is, I was thinking from my right now perspective of, well, what gains do we have to make? But you could think, okay, one, let's think strategically. Maybe we can still make some gains, but let's not just make those gains and only return the benefits to the company. We can think about returning them to the employee, which is interesting. So,
yeah.
I know there's other questions here. I have more, but
yeah, I'm pulling up the chat. Let me see what else is in here. Molly's question about feeling isolated if there are other people. I have been kind of labeled as the 4-day work week guy, but people send and share things in either DM me things they read or share them in other channels and tag me in them or really participate in the conversation. So I don't feel isolated that it's just me. I've gotten several people excited about it to the point that they feel comfortable talking about it, sharing it, and maybe don't realize that they're pushing for it when they're just sharing this information, which people do see, and it continues to grow and build that snowball. And then Michael's question, 4-day weekend. So what convinced me I wanted to talk about this with management? We have, as a company, we're really focused on like getting your work done, not being in front of the computer for 40 hours. And there have been moments where I've needed to work a flex day or something like that. Maybe I start earlier or come back later, or I just really hunkered down for the day and do my job faster. That made me realize like I can probably do this in less time if there was something like really important that I needed to get it done for. And because it is kind of tiring, and over time, like we'd build new processes to make that sustainable, like condensing your workday and just doing it faster. It's not something you'd want to do every day. But I realized that there was room for this to possibly happen. And also, like, I don't live to work, work to live, you know? So like, it would be cool to have that extra day. Like any 3-day weekend, I always just feel so much better when I come back to work than on a standard 2-day weekend. It's like that extra day is really the vacation day, because there's always other tasks that I'm pushing off on Saturday. I'm gonna vacuum my car and I gotta go to the store, and like we've turned those days into not necessarily days for us, but days for us to take care of other things that we need to do. Yeah.
That was taking me to, so I'm gonna ask one more before these other ones here, is like, is it which 4 days is the question? Like I could see implementations, right, where like, oh, employees get to pick the day, or it's different days, which could be convenient, but also could be a mess that now nobody's available for meetings. So like in the implementations that it's been successful, is everyone taking the same day, or is it more about like 32 hours is the point? And so maybe it's still 5 days, but an hour and a half less of each of the 5 days, or like what does that usually look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. From the experiments I've seen, they're generally in non-remote businesses. And so that office would just either be closed, usually is closed on Friday. Since like people always jokingly say, and it's partially true, that like a lot less work gets done on Friday. So they close on Friday, everyone's gone. And that makes it easy to manage meetings and stuff like that. But then you start getting into exactly like, well, the support team, we can't all take off on Friday. So we do like a half Monday, half Friday situation. But then like maybe there's other people who would rather work those and actually want the Wednesday off. So like how much do we respect just like their preference versus like what's functional for the business and what kind of challenges those introduce. And so one of the things I've kind of talked about, because there's a lot of people that I work with that I don't talk to on a daily basis or even a monthly basis, just in other recesses of the company where we don't overlap. So maybe it's like a team specific thing. For instance, if you work closely with 9 people, as long as it really works for the 9 of you, and then your manager has the right schedule to meet with people above her that she needs to advocate with for things you were working on, then maybe that would work. But yeah, I haven't cracked that one yet. But it's certainly, if you start letting people pick, a lot of room for extra problems. Go back to the chat, let's see. Yeah, so to Melissa's question, we've talked about every option. You know, do the employees get to pick? Do the teams get to pick? We still haven't kind of picked one yet. I love the idea of letting the teams pick, but I also don't have enough of a bird's eye view to say like, hey, that could really blow some things out of the water. That's also a good question. Tuesday, Friday versus Monday, Thursday, what's better? I haven't seen any data on that, but I have met people who have very strong opinions on like, I want the Monday off versus I want the Friday off. So I don't know if that would end up just working out better for them. They'd be more productive. But I didn't think it was that much of a big deal. Some people have like very strong opinions about that one, which has been funny through all these conversations. And what do I think I need to move this along in my organization? That's a great question. I don't really know at the moment. All of our founders are out on paternity leave right now, so maybe that will help. Before they didn't have kids and now they do, and they realize that extra day is super, super important to them. Maybe I think with school coming back around in the fall, and a lot of parents looking to work with their managers on a one-on-one basis, I think might be some catalyst for change at an organizational level for us to talk about this. Enough people having this isolated conversation in a serious context could really move it forward. But at the moment, I don't see anything directly that I can combat that will kind of move this along.
When you were pitching it before, like, I don't know where it ended of like someone, you know, oftentimes is the case with these things, people pass the buck, oh, do it in this forum with these people, do it here. I'm not going to tell you no, but I'm going to, you know, make you do something else. Like, I guess, was it always pitching it on a big scale, or were you ever trying to pitch a small scale pilot with a specific team or a specific group, or could you get a manager with a team of 6 people even, or a director with a team of 20 people? Like, have you tried any aspect of being able to do a small scale pilot to get data?
Yeah, so that's what I asked for originally because I realized it was a tough thing to pitch everyone on at once. But then to all your questions, it came down to like, well, who would do it and what does that look like? And the questions for that seemed never ending. And it got a pretty hard no from the C-suite as being a distraction that takes away from the OKRs that we were focusing on at the time. Um, so it didn't really, there wasn't wiggle room. It wasn't left open. They pretty swiftly were like, we're just gonna
But I
put it to
think
bed
then
now.
to the who would do it question, then like, yeah, the C-suite doesn't know, and they don't have any visibility to because it's like far. Oh, and you're not
Certainly.
that big, but you're big, you know. So like, I don't know. Did you try a road show to like some managers, directors specifically, and just like, hey, would any of you be willing to have your team do this pilot? Like, was that an approach, or do you feel like you would get in trouble for going and doing that, or like, I don't know.
Yeah, so I did push it with my manager a little tongue in cheek because we do have unlimited like time off policies. So I was like, Tosh, what if we all just take Friday off for the next 8 weeks? And she was like, I see what you're up to. It's not the hill I want to die on. I was like, that's fair. So I haven't really been able to get anyone else to buy into it because yeah, once it got swiftly put down and was like labeled as not a top priority, it was really tough to get buy-in on that. Um, but it is something that is funny enough, other teams have still been talking about it. It hasn't died. And people keep coming back to me and being like, oh, at our team meeting today, we were talking about it. So it's
Well, so that's
smoldering right
interesting.
now.
Then you mentioned that almost Trojan horse approach of what if we all take off that day? So you tried that with having a manager do it. What if all the people who've reached out to you about wanting to do 4-day work week, what if you get that group to all start doing it? Like what
Yeah,
would happen? I don't know,
I
right?
don't
But
know.
like, yeah.
A part of me feels like then we could get, a little bit yelled at, but it's also worth like just submitting those days off and seeing what happens. The worst they're going to say is like, no, I doubt all the managers will see all of those requests at once because we're all in different teams. That's a
Because that could be an
fair point.
interesting story. How we covertly tried a 4-day work week and
How
no
no
one
one realized we were all working 4-day work weeks until we were.
because I feel like you have enough momentum and like anytime the fact that it's not dying and that people are still reaching out to you, I feel like there's a lot to still capitalize on there. So I
Certainly.
know we're kind of at time for right now, but like, and we're going to see each other soon. We can talk more about this, but like, I think that I feel like there's the seeds for real opportunity here. So
Yeah.
my last question I had real quick was about levels in the organization.
Hmm.
So I don't know if in the pilots it was like everybody all the way down does it or did it or whatever. Or like I'm wondering if there's a certain level of senior leader that like, hey, they all make way more than the rest of the people anyway, and we want to work all 5 days, fine. Like, is there a level at which the 4-day thing versus everybody? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I haven't seen any data like, oh, at Microsoft they only did like levels 1 through 3, but 4 and 5 kept working or something like that. Usually I haven't been able to see anything in the pilot. I know at work it's a big hit more so with independent contributors than with management folks. Generally because we have less time zone wonked schedules, we have less things we're responsible for, more things we can do faster on our own time. But if you do have people that you're responsible for and have to meet with and have to write reports for and stuff, it's hard to condense all of that when you are responsible for them, or at least I think that's part of the fear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Spencer, for this great presentation. We look forward to connecting with everyone back on Slack. If you have any more questions for Spencer, please feel free to either connect with him privately and or give him a shout out in the general channel. So if you really enjoyed this, if you have any ideas for future events, if you would like to share what you're working on with us for Cultivators, please let us know. And you can always send me a private message. We'll chat with everyone soon. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.